Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their lives, inviting us all to reflect and grow together. Today we're joined by Jim Masher, a remarkable author and human development engineer who has dedicated over 50,000 hours to exploring the depths of human potential. With a rich background that spans psychology, philosophy, and even the arts, Jim brings a unique perspective to our conversation. Let's dive into Jim's journey and discover the wisdom that has inspired him along the way.
Okay, so I'm going to back
Yeah,
up a little bit so you have this.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so I now had 32 scales, each of which had 7 levels, each of which had mathematics embedded in it. And having gone to school for 28 years, uh, it was clear to me that this was a new subject because I never saw anything like this. And then I said, wait a minute, I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out so people can have it. So I'm going to have to write a book. So the first
yeah.
draft of the book was finished in December of 95, and I sent it immediately to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects, and they all loved it. They had different responses, but distinctly positive responses. And that told me, yes, this is exactly what I think it is, a new subject that people will get and it will help them. I then spent the next 25 years working on this book because you have to realize, starting from that moment where the first scale manifested mathematically, I had to develop this thing. So first I had to develop the septemic phenomena, uh, and I pretty much told you already how I did that, although I did find 3 more skills as I was writing the book.
Yeah,
Then,
I want us to like take to like we're moving really really fast. I want
yep,
us to like take a break a bit. The things you're explaining, right?
yeah.
They're like, could you speak layman language? Could you say it if you were to explain this systemic and all that? So a 5-year-old child, what exactly does it do and what does it mean? So we
Okay.
know, yeah, for those who
Okay.
are not who are new to
Okay.
the feed.
Septemics is a
Yeah,
philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and together they span the spectrum of human experience. By which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has that has anything to do with people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these skills, usually more than one. So this is very useful and very helpful to people. It helps them understand people very well, faster than they could even imagine prior to having this. So that's what this
oh,
is about.
okay. So if I understand you correctly, this systemic approach is more like, thank God you were an engineer before you started
Yes,
doing human engineering. So
yes,
the example I'm going to give will make sense to you. So it's more like the theory of everything, but for human, that's for people.
yes, for human affairs. And the word
Yeah.
is septemics, Septemics.
Okay.
So now let me tell you how this is beneficial to people because people are going to say, well, why should I pay attention to this? I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. Each of these skills provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity is moved up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves people down the scale, it's detrimental or negative. So I'm giving you a yardstick by which to measure human affairs. So whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship or a family relationship, you can always use this material to analyze it and gain understanding of
Yeah.
what's going on in this relationship. Now, once you know the actual level of the person, you have to realize when you spot that level, you will have a realization. You'll look at it and you'll say, gee, I wonder where my mother is on this scale. And you get down to level, she's at level 4. That explains why she does X, Y, and Z. See, that's a realization. So the more you
Mm.
use it, the more realizations you have. So it is inherently beneficial to people, psychologically, intellectually, and mentally, because it's
Oh,
a fruitful source of insight. Now, once you know the correct level, you can then improve that person, whether it's yourself or another, by moving them up one level on that scale. So let's say you spot the person's at level 5, you target the person for level 4, and the person will be able to get to level 4 because that's the next level up. Just like if you're on the 18th floor, you can get to the 19th pretty easily by just going up the stairs. You can't
Yeah.
get to the 20th floor without going through the 19th. So uh, this fact that you can improve a person up to the next level solves the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. And let me tell you what I mean by it. Most people have problems, dilemmas, situations, difficulties that they can't resolve. They don't know how to resolve it. At least 99% of the time, it's because they don't know the gradient. Human affairs has to be developed on a gradient. In other words, you have to pick up the person at the level he's at in whatever context we're talking and move him up to the next level up. So that is why crash diets and crash exercise programs don't work, because
Hmm.
they're too steep a gradient. If you're at level 4 and you try to get to level 3, you will get there because it's the next level up. But if you try to get to level 1 or 2, you will fail because it's too steep a gradient. You are skipping a level. So you can't do
Yeah.
it. So this is very useful. So let me give you an example of how this could work. Let's say most people have children, and most children have trouble in school, right? So the dad sees that his daughter is having trouble. She's getting C's and D's. He says, "Come over here, honey. Let me show you this." And let's say she's 13. So he opens the book to the scale of scholarship. Well, she knows what a scholar is. So she will look at this and she will say something like, "You mean there's a scale of scholarship?" And you say, "Yeah. Where are you on the scale?" Guaranteed she's going to want to know that because she's having trouble in this area. And this is a possible solution. So, what will happen is in a matter of seconds, and I mean like 15, 20, 25 seconds, she will find a bracket. She'll say something like, "Well, I can see right away that I'm not at level 1, 2, or 3 because that's the top of the scale, and I'm not good at this." And he says, "Okay, so you got it down to 4, 5, 6, 7. Go ahead and read the text, and then you can get it exactly." So she reads the text. Dad helps her as a tutor. And then she comes back, and now that she read it, she knows herself. She now knows the scale. She says, "Well, I can see now I'm at level 5. No wonder I have trouble in school. That's near the bottom of the scale." And she will have some very specific realizations. So, and the dad can say to her, "We could move you up to level 4 and then you'll be a better student." She says, "You can?" He says, "Yes, it tells you in the book how to do that." So she says, "Okay, let's do it." So the dad works with the daughter using the instructions in the chapter, and he makes her a better scholar. Then she moves up from level 5 to level 4. And when the next report card comes out, instead of getting C's and D's, she's getting B's and C's. Now, all this was done without spending any more money, without hiring a tutor, without sending the kid to remedial classes, without invalidating the kid. And because it helps her, it strengthens the bond between the parent and the child. So that is like a kind of an obvious example of how to use this in a very common way that almost everybody would benefit.
Oh, earlier on, you mentioned that you've been working on this book for over 25 years.
The book itself, the writing of the book itself took 25 years. And let me tell
So,
you why.
okay.
From the point, remember I told you I had written the first draft. That was in December of 95. I sent it to colleagues of mine. They all loved it. Then I said, "Okay, I'm going to have to work on this." First, I had to discover the phenomena, the septemic phenomena, which apparently nobody knew other than I. Then you have to realize I kind of told you already how that happened in the sessions, and then I would see it outside the session to verify it. Then I had to take that data and I had to use it to craft a workable philosophic system. You just have to realize, as an engineer, I'm only interested in results and facts. That's it. That's what engineering is about. You can't say whoops in engineering. You're not allowed to say that. You have to build something that works all the time for everybody. You can't have the bridge fall into the river or the plane fall out of the sky and say whoops. So that means you have there's all of these things that we do as an engineer to have factors of error, to have to have headroom to make sure this is going to work all the time for every person. So let's say, for example, if I'm building a phone and I think, okay, 35 volts is about right for this, I would not use 35 volts. I might use 45 because you want to have headroom. See, you want to have more than you need. And that's
Yeah.
done continuously. That's what I had to do. So it took 20 years to craft this philosophic system so that it would work all the time for every person. But the most time consuming aspect of this was expressing it in a way that would make sense to the average reader. And I know I succeeded at that because some version of this book has existed now for almost 30 years. And I have been watching people get this. This is not hard to get. Somebody who knows nothing about it will open the book, look at a certain scale, and say, "Ah, yeah, this makes sense." Now, you know why it makes sense? It's natural law. So the data
Oh,
in this book is similar to the Pythagorean theorem, which is also natural law, the periodic table of elements, which is also natural law, or Newton's three laws of motion, which is also natural law. And I absolutely know, because I worked on this for 25 years, these scales are correct. Now, you might want to
yeah.
quibble with what word I used in what place to explain something, although I think I've done pretty well with that, because in the 30 years, nobody has ever said to me, you know, this would have made more sense if you used that word. That has never happened. What I generally
Yeah.
get from people when they read this book is they say, wow, this is big. And they're right. This is big because it covers all of human affairs. Now, what I should do now for the benefit of your audience is tell you the names of the 35 scales so they will know exactly what subject matter is addressed in this book. May I do that?
Yeah. It's as if you could read
Okay.
my mind. That was the question I was about to ask next.
You want to ask the question first?
Yeah, that was the question I was about to ask next. So considering that the meeting is 30 minutes, I don't know if you could like do a quick rundown, like rapid fire of 35 is a lot. So I would love for us to like quickly cover everything so that if we then have time, we can then double down and then you can maybe pick your favorites and then explain and go deeper in them.
Okay.
But we have
So
about
let
eight
me
minutes here.
so let me tell you the names of the scales. Of the 35 scales, 24 of them are individual scales and 11 of them are group scales. These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And let me give you an example how that would work. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know is someone's motivation. Excuse me. Why is this person doing this? See, that's a good thing to know. So I did the heavy lifting by getting it down to the 7 basic human motivations. Somebody might say, well, there are thousands of motivations. No, there are only 7 basic ones, and all the others are subsets of these. So you could ask yourself, what is my father's motivation toward me? What is my brother's motivation toward me? What is my boss's motivation toward me? What is my girlfriend's motivation toward me? Every time you get a correct answer, you will have a realization. Ah, that's my girlfriend's motivation. That explains why she does X, Y, and Z. Now, you could do this with every person you know and every person you have ever known, which means you could ask this 200, 300, 400, 500 times. And every time you get a correct answer, you'll have a realization. Ah, that explains why I couldn't get along with Joe back in 1992. So you could then reverse the vector and say, what is Joe's motivation toward me? What is Mary's motivation toward me? You see? So it's your
Yeah.
motivation toward them and their motivation toward you. And you could use it that way again another 200 or 300 or 400 times. And every time you get a correct answer, you're having a realization. So by the time you finish this, on both directions, you will have had 500 or 600 or 700 realizations, depending on how many people you know. And
Yeah.
so you would be much brighter. Your
Yeah.
understanding of these people would be enhanced because you would know their motivation toward you and your motivation toward them. That is a
Yeah.
big improvement. But you have to realize this is just one scale. There are
Yeah.
35 of these. So this is
Yeah.
very useful. For example, let's say you have a wife. You could find your wife on all 35 scales. I'm not saying to tell her what you find. Don't do that. Just for your own illumination. Where is she on the scale? Where is she on the scale? Where is she on? And every time you get a correct answer, you will have a realization. That is one of the ways that you know you found the right answer. If you don't have a realization, you found the wrong answer. So
Yeah.
by the time you finish this exercise of analyzing your wife across 35 axes, you will understand her better than she understands herself. So obviously, your relationship is going to be much better because you really understand her. So
You
that's how
talked.
it works.
You talked about the scale of motivation, right? That's what you're talking about, and you mentioned that there are seven under the scale of motivation.
What about the scale?
Yeah, you said there are seven. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
7 levels. 7 levels, yes.
Could you mention those seven so that we can my listeners can quickly do a thought, kind of like a quick run through in their head of okay, what
Okay.
what are the motivation, yeah, so that they can,
Okay.
yeah, run that for themselves.
Okay. So let me just open to that in the book
Okay. Okay, no
because
problem.
I don't usually do this, but since you asked,
Yeah.
here, okay.
Because when you were mentioning the use cases, it was really interesting because I want to know what are the motivations
Okay.
some of my friends have for
Okay.
towards me.
Okay. Level 7, which is the lowest of all, is destruction. That is the
Hmm.
motivation. That's, or you
Hmm.
can call it subversion. Up from that at level 6 is suicide. You could
Hmm.
also call that oblivion. Up from
Wow.
that is revenge, which you could also
Wow.
call justice. Up from that is
Wow.
wealth, which usually takes the form of money, but it doesn't have to. Up from that is status, which is a type of fame. Up from that is duty, which is obligation. And at the top of the list is charity, which means love. Those are the 7 basic motivations. Now, if you look at the scale, there's a
Wow.
whole body of data. It's very
Wow.
carefully laid out. So you will see this is constructed like a Chinese puzzle. So after you study
Wow.
these scales, you will see this is correct. It's like when you
Wow.
study the Pythagorean theorem, you look at it, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And afterwards, I get this. And you have it for the rest of your life. Nobody can talk you out of the Pythagorean theorem because it's natural law. And that's what these
Wow.
scales are. Now, let me explain something that will help you get this. Several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And having gone to school for 28 years, I have to say in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before, at least on Earth. Maybe there's one on another planet we don't know about. But I can tell you this. Each of these 35 scales is expressed in what you'd call a table or a spreadsheet, which has all the data. You know, it's like a plane of data. And it's laid
Yeah.
out very similar to the periodic table of elements.
Yeah.
Now, the periodic table of elements gives you a periodic table for all the elements of matter, right? When it was
And those to
originally,
come. Yeah.
yeah, and originally he had, I think, 79. Now we have something like
Yeah.
125 because we keep
Yeah.
finding new ones and adding it. And the reason we can add it is because it works. It's natural law. This
Yeah.
system works. And most people, when they look at that, they say you're 13 or 14 or whatever when you first see it. You say, oh, this makes sense. Hydrogen is 1, helium is 2, lithium is 3, bop, horizontally and vertically. And it's very useful right away. Now, each one of these different scales that I mentioned has a corresponding periodic table in the book. So there's a periodic table for basic purposes. There's a periodic table for motivation. There's a periodic table for control. These are all big areas in human life. So when you look at this, it really explains the whole phenomenon of what this is about, like the scale of conflict. Conflict is a big subject in life, and there are only 7 levels of conflict. Now, the other thing I have to tell you that makes this really useful is every person is at some level on every scale. There are no exceptions. And
Yeah.
this is important because do you ever notice when you go to the doctor, they always take your blood pressure?
Yeah.
You know why they do that? because they know you have one and they don't know what it is. That's
Wow.
exactly what happens when you come to this book. You say, okay, I know my wife is at one of these levels on the scale of control. Which is it? See, you only have to select from 7. And if you know her well and you study the chapter, it will not be hard because all of the elements of control are there on the table. So it's not
Wow.
hard to figure out. So
Yeah.
this is very user friendly. People get this. I've been watching people get this for almost 30 years now. People get it. They look at the book. Like a guy opens the book, never looked at it before, and he looks at, let's say, for example, the scale of equanimity. And he gets down to level 4 and he says, wait a minute, this is my mother in law. This is exactly how she is. It describes her perfectly. Now, I don't know this guy's mother in law. I probably never even met the reader. So, how did I nail it so exactly? And the answer is it's natural law, right?
Wow.
So if you have a garden and it's 3 yards on one side and 4 yards on the other side, I know without measuring anything that diagonal across that is going to be 5 yards because that's the Pythagorean theorem. It's always
Yeah.
right. And that's what these scales are like. They're always right. I know for
Yeah.
a fact from having spent most of my life figuring this out, the scales are correct. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Thank you so much. Like, I feel like in the future, I'll probably invite you for another episode, and then in that episode, we'll just pick one law and deal with it because this is not exactly kind of book you want to do top level. There's just so much in it that wow, wow.
If you want to dive deeper into the insights Jim shared today, head over to septemics.com. That is septemics.com, and explore more of his work. There you'll be able to connect with him and also check out his books. Thanks for listening to Relatable Wisdom. If you found something meaningful in this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.